Hey, chismosas.
Welcome to the Tell Me Chisme podcast with Marty and Kim. Hey guys, welcome to
Welcome
today's
back.
episode. We are in my room for this episode because we're back home for Easter
Yeah.
weekend, so that's why we have a different background.
So happy
but
Easter if you celebrate.
Yes, happy Easter, everyone. So we decided we had some other topics in mind, but I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really feeling them, and I was like, if we're gonna film an episode, I feel like I need something.
Yeah, and I called
more
out
easier,
and I
flowy.
called out Maddie for some of the past couple episodes where I'm like, maybe she looks a little disinterested in what I'm talking about, but because you can clearly tell they were topics I had suggested, so this is one that she came up with today.
Yes, and I feel like it's something we've talked about before. That's why I thought it would be easy to just kind of roll off the tongue. So we did not come prepared for this one. So in case we're kind of pulling at strings in some things, it's because we didn't do research for this one.
Do you want to talk about what inspired it? I think you said that you saw something, no?
Yeah, so I had seen a video. I want to say it was a TikTok. I don't know if it was a journalist or something, but essentially it was basically following some immigrants that were hopping on a train that was going to take them right up to like a border town with the hopes that they would be able to cross the border into the United States. And the one that really kind of stood out to me, and in the comments too, that everyone was pointing out, it was a young couple or a younger couple with like a toddler, anywhere from like a 1-year-old to like a 3. They're pretty small, like 2 years old. A child, but they have some sort of like malformation to the face, and I guess it's something that they haven't been able to operate in whatever country. I can't remember where they were at. And I remember the comments saying, oh man, wait until you hear how in America not even Americans are able to get health care. Like, it's not affordable at all. And not just that, sometimes they won't like do a procedure unless it's like life-saving, like on somebody that can't pay. They don't have insurance or something.
So Maddie seen this video kind of inspired the question that we want to talk about today, and it's that,
is the American dream dead, or is it being falsely promised to immigrants in other countries?
yeah, I mean, to start off right away, to answer that question simply, I think that American dream is dead. I'm not sure if it will ever exist as the way, like, I think it was promised at one point. I don't think that'll ever happen again. Like, I can only speak, obviously we're not immigrants, but our parents are, so it's like we only know so much from like whatever they've told us. And I feel like for my parents, they obviously, you hear probably the story a million times, but it doesn't make it any less invalid that people come over here because they want to, either escape violence or poverty from whatever country they're from, and they come over here because they know that they're essentially kind of being promised, well, as long as you work hard, you'll have this freedom and you can pay for this, that, right? And so I think for a while that kind of was like the dream that was promised, and they were able to work with it and achieve certain things, but it's like I don't know if that would still be achievable today if the circumstances were still the same,
Yeah, and I think about, like, for example, when my mom, she decided that she was going to come to the United States, none of her other sisters had any really desire to come to the United States. They were like, what is there in the U.S.? Like, I'm going to get married here and I'm going to stay here and raise my kids here. I think my mom was the only one out of her siblings that kind of had that mindset of, I don't want to get married so young. I don't know. I'm not thinking about kids right now. So I think that's the only thing that kind of encouraged her. But there were lots of people, like, even back then when there was that American dream, I think there were some people that were like, well, one, like, I'm not escaping any dire violence right now.
Yeah.
Like anything imminent. I don't even know if I'm using that word right, but whatever. Like I said, they're not escaping anything. Yes, poverty's always been around, but I'm not gonna lie, countries like Mexico and all that, most people are in poverty, but I feel like
they're still
life
living
is
a
so
more
different.
positive life.
And I'm not gonna say they're living happily poverty, because that would just be, I'd be a hypocrite saying that, because I have no, I've never lived over there.
Correct.
But I'm saying I feel like the lifestyle is so much different.
I think for me, the times we visited, you probably visited for a longer period of time than me, but I feel like whenever I go over there, life moves slower, but in a great way. Like, there's not this like sense of like urgency all the time versus here in the States. I feel like everything is like go, go, go. Like, your life is revolving around just like working, and over there it's like, no, like, it's okay to chill out. It's okay to take like time.
Yeah, and that's why we've seen so many, at this point, white people too go and retire in Mexico.
Yeah, because they're like, well, I want to relax too.
Life goes a lot slower, I don't know. They don't have that like American hustle and work till you die
which
mindset.
Sucks because I feel like that's such like a Mexican stereotype that we're the most hardworking people, but it's like because I feel like they've had to be. I feel like that doesn't make it a great thing. I feel like we also need to learn how to relax sometimes. And like, for example, my dad, he's one of those people that's like, if he has free time, he genuinely cannot relax. Maybe now that he's getting older, he's found a way to do it. But back then, it's like, no, I have to be doing something. I have to be using my time in a valuable way. I can't just relax.
And that could be something, man. I feel like this could also be a whole other podcast, but kind
Like
of just
trauma.
I was gonna say, kind of to throw that in there, like they have had such a different upbringing that they almost feel like I have to work constantly for something, and like maybe because like they're immigrants too, like I have to constantly work towards something because I didn't come here for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they have that mindset of I can't waste a moment away. I have to, I didn't come here for nothing. I gotta work, work, work. So then I feel like that kind of gets passed a different version of that gets passed along to us. Like when you see those videos of people saying, wow, now I have this great high paying job. I went to school or whatever, started my own business. They're like, now I feel a little guilty, feeling like I have the freedom to vacation, travel,
And my parents
take
didn't get to
breaks.
experience that.
Because people are like, I feel like I feel bad because my parents are still not going to retire. Either they can't or they don't want to.
Yeah.
And they're like, I feel that guilt really. So I think, like I said, one thing is it's like kind of like a domino effect, but like flipped a little bit in a different version.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like obviously we can only speak for like our parents because they're immigrants from Mexico. I think when we also talk about the American dream, it's like when we talk about even like people that we know now that are trying to come here legally or whichever way you want to talk about it, it's like back then it was simpler because there wasn't as much tech, there wasn't as much surveillance, so it's like back then that American dream seemed, I think, more like probable because you're like, well, I can get over there. It'll be a dangerous way to get over there, but I can do it. Now it's like I feel like you're actually risking your life. Like it's a lot more like everything's on the
and
line.
not that you weren't back then.
Yeah,
but
the
I
risk
feel
is
like-
just higher, I
yeah.
feel. But I don't know, like when we talk about the American dream, it's like for us, our parents, like whenever they came over here, I don't know if they had it like planned out from the moment they got here, but it's like for as long as I can remember, my dad has always made it very known that he wanted us to do more with our life than just high school and that was it, and you do what you want. It's like,
and like I said, that's I feel like immigrant mentality onto the kids.
absolutely. So like for them to be like, okay, well, I came over here, I did that sacrifice, I hope you go to college, you get a degree, and then from there you decide what your life is. That's kind of the American dream, right? But I don't know how possible that would be now. Like if someone right now, like my parents were to come from Mexico, come here now, like what are the chances for them now, like that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know how.
That's the thing. People in America with college degrees are barely affording houses. If immigrants are coming and getting jobs at restaurants as housekeepers, as whatever, gardeners, the stereotypes, how are they going to be able to afford houses? They're just the same prices, just I feel like are not as promising as they used to be.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is like, okay, the American dream, I think while we talk about it from an immigrant standpoint, we also got to think about us being people that were born and raised here. Like I think growing up, the dream that's promised to all students is, well, if you go to college, you're going to be successful. If you do everything the right way, one day you're going to be able to work hard enough and save enough, and you're going to be able to afford a house. And it's like these things that were once a reality years ago are slowly starting to like decrease. Like now for me, maybe for you because you're in a steady job where you're kind of always going to have a job promise because she's a nurse. For me, I'm getting a little bit more scared because I'm like, that dream is starting to become less of a reality for me. I don't know if I'll ever be a house owner. I think the average house owner age now is like 50 years old.
And I saw something about how the annual house income needs to be 100,000 in I think
Kansas.
no, it was like most parts I think of the country, and it was saying how in California it's double that.
Yeah, because
to
I
be able
saw
to buy a
Kansas,
house.
in order to live comfortably, like what you would have to receive minimum would be 97,000 a year.
Mm.
That would have to be your pay, and it's like a lot of people aren't getting
Well,
that.
probably annual income. Yeah.
Correct.
And once again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the previous podcast about there's not going to be two income people if somebody has to stay home because of childcare or whatever.
That's like, so even that dream of, let's say people were thinking of like more of a traditional American dream, it's like not even that is possible anymore, like both people have to work, like everybody has to work. And I feel like some people might be like, okay, well, that's a desire, it's a privilege to work or be able to go get a job, yes, but that even then that is still becoming difficult for people. Like there's people looking for jobs, but there's this thing that's saying like everyone's hiring yet no one is hiring. Like businesses are looking for people yet they won't hire anybody.
And I feel like, I'm not like some, economy expert or anything.
Yeah.
But then it makes you wonder, all these people, like older generations are like, oh my gosh, you pay so much in rent. That could be a mortgage payment. And it makes you think like, okay, buddy, most people nowadays, even if they wanted to be homeowners, they can't.
Yeah.
Second of all, not everyone wants to be a homeowner at this point, because not only whatever mortgage prices are probably, they're still probably paying less than rent. But if your AC goes out, your boiler, something like there's a water
You're
leak,
responsible for
you're responsible
that.
for that. And if you barely have enough to make the mortgage, most people, I think it was like 60% of Americans or something. I think if they miss one paycheck, I think it
We're
was like
all literally
they,
one paycheck away
yeah.
from being homeless. Like that's why or unhoused, if that's the correct term. It's just wild, you know, like aside from even just like housing, it's like there's a lot of people that, like back then it's like you could dream of going to college, getting a good job, and then like let's say for either man or woman, whatever, like you would have maybe a desire to start a family. It's like that's why there's so many people now that aren't even like picturing that, because like I can't even imagine, I can't even afford to live for myself. I'm like, how can I afford to, you know, have a family? It's like that's, I feel like that's not even a dream for so many people now. It's like, well, now I'm just trying to worry about myself. I'm trying to survive.
And now it makes you think about, for example, those foreign exchange students that come and study here legally,
Yeah.
and now how their visas are getting revoked. So, like I said, this American dream, whatever all it included years ago, I think, and once again, I do think, the U.S., for the most part, there are lots of things, as much as I feel like we low-key love talking crap about the government and all that, because it's so easy
Yeah,
to,
absolutely.
especially with stuff happening, like, constantly,
Currently.
yeah, and so much negativity and stuff in the media. There are some, and like I said, this, regardless politician stuff, like there are some things that this country offers that other places don't.
Absolutely. Like when I, okay, I think sometimes like the privileges that I have here that sometimes I take for granted, I'm like the fact that I can still technically, like I can drive a car. If I were to get married, I could get divorced. Like I don't need permission from anybody else. There's other countries where like women quite literally are, it's illegal for them to speak. Like that is insane. That's
Yeah.
something I have to think
You
about.
go to the ER, regardless.
Yeah, they have to take you
they have
in.
to, if it's like something emergent, they have to take you in and treat you. Now, there's all these other
Yeah.
things, they got
Which
to ask for your legal
that's
status in some
something that we
places,
like,
but
we talk about now, because we have had family members in Mexico where recently they've had like problems where they've had to go to the hospital. No, over there you have to pay up front or you're not getting seen, essentially.
yeah.
You're not getting
If you don't
care.
have the money for the surgery, whatever,
Like that's
tough
kind of
luck.
it. Yeah.
And
That's
then same thing,
horrible.
yeah, and same thing with like blood banks. The blood banks don't work the same everywhere.
Oh yeah, like recently we had a family member that needed blood, and like they had run out. You had to go physically look for someone that would be
Yeah.
willing to give
And the
blood
thing
for
is,
your
they
family
do have
member.
a blood bank, though. They will provide the blood, but you have to replace it for them. So you have to find people to come in and basically replenish their like supply that they used on your family member.
Yeah.
So, if you're just like a single person, no family, no friends, and you just end up in the hospital, good luck, I guess. I don't know.
Do you feel like there's any like, I guess, characteristics of like what was once stereotypically like the American dream that are still alive or still exist?
Let me think. I don't know. Maybe, and maybe just off the top of my head, I can't think.
I think for me, like, even with how difficult it's become, like for some, it's always been difficult to go to school, especially if you're part of a minority group. But I feel like even with everything going on and like, let's say them reducing funding or whatever, or FAFSA being cut, I'm like, even then, I'm like, I hope that forever that is still going to be a dream for everybody to, if you have the opportunity to go to school, to go. I know that's not the route for everybody, but like, regardless, even if I were to start over from square zero, like right now, I would still want to go. Even with all the stress and the money factor, I'm like, I would still want to go. So I feel like that part of the dream hasn't left me, because I feel like I'm more grateful for everything I've learned. And I think I would regret not going.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm trying to. I was thinking of the, like the basic, like the life essentials or whatever, And I'm thinking about, okay, if you're dealing with homelessness, in another country, you come here, our country has a big, unlike housed problem too.
Yeah.
Let me think. Like, I mean, same thing. If you're in a country that has a lot of like gang and drugs.
Yeah, that's something we have to talk about too. Like from where our parents are from, it's not like huge cities in Mexico. And I think for them, like they're like Marty was talking about, they didn't escape because they were, or that escape is the wrong reason. They didn't come over here because they were escaping or running away from violence. Maybe had you been from another state, that could have been a very possible reality. Yeah. They just wanted a better life, right? They just wanted more opportunities that they probably were never going to get in Mexico. That's just the truth, right? But the thing is like when we compare like for the American dream here, it's like now there's other people from other countries, even Mexico, despite the violence that's over there. There's people that look at America and they're like, okay, well the violence is also like, it's like, I don't even want to say unregulated. It's just like it's insane that like so much happens and like it could be stopped or prevented, but it's just not.
Yeah, like I see when I'm watching videos, right, with school shootings or whatever. There's other countries, like people watching videos from the U.S.,
They're like, how
like
does
from
that
the U.S. side
happen?
of TikTok, that they're like, why does it seem like this is a weekly thing? Like, are you
Because
guys
it
okay?
almost is.
And it's people commenting like, aren't people afraid to go to school anymore? Things like
Yeah,
that.
literally. Like I do thank goodness that we never have to go through it. I mean, I'm almost done with college. Hopefully everything goes well, you know, but like that is a very real reality, you know, and like we had talked about this when was that? We watched a documentary or something once and we're like it's insane that there was at one point in the US where like that wasn't a known thing. It wasn't until like Sandy Hook, you know, that was like the first major one, and from then on I feel like it's just continued, and if not it's gotten worse. But it's like that's not a worry. Even with the amount of violence in Mexico, I would assume that people aren't scared to go to school and risking that like someone's
Yeah.
gonna barge in. Like that's still an insane thing, and like that's not the American dream. But still, like you would still risk it to go to school for a better education. Is it's so weird, right?
Yeah, and not just like another thing too that I think about that keeps people in Mexico is like the culture of family.
It's very
That
family
keeps
oriented.
that keeps a lot of people, I feel like, in their country. And I'm thinking too, like we talk about generational wealth here in the US, but
Yeah,
I feel like generational wealth to a degree is a big thing in Mexico too. Like if your grandpa whatever has a lot of land that's worth a lot of money,
you're more
that
inclined to
normally,
stay.
yeah, that'll most likely be passed along to like the son, the whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then so forth. So I feel like that generational wealth to a degree, like animals,
Yeah, or even like people in Mexico that are like, even if they're small business owners and they own like a convention store, they're more likely to like stay there too and like pass on to their kid or whatever. Even if it barely makes ends meet, they're more likely to stay.
yeah.
I feel like people also kind of get like that, like a sense of like comfortability where they're too scared to risk it, and that's why a lot of people stay. Which, you know what, I don't blame them because like I can't relate to ever experiencing that. So I'm like, I don't know what that feels like. I'm like, even with everything horrible happening here, I can't say that I'd be willing to risk it all right now and leave tomorrow. You know, that's an insane risk, and I think a lot of people think it sounds easier because of the amount of people that go through it, but it doesn't make it any easier.
And for example, we had some cousins that are, I mean, at the time they were under 18,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the opportunity to file for like asylum,
Yeah.
for escaping violence. They had that opportunity. They would have, come here legally, to a
Yep.
degree, but they just chose not to.
Yeah.
They had their family here, they were still younger, and they just, once again, they had some keeping them in the country, so they stayed in Mexico instead of, they could have had that opportunity to come, and despite the opportunity to being there, they chose to stay at home.
I think on the flip side, we should all talk about like our cousin that had attempted. She filed so that she wanted to try and get her. Was it her visa, right?
She filed a tourist visa for her and her husband.
They had never been here before, obviously. So like,
Yeah.
there's no record of them even entering, whatever you want to call it, right? And they got denied. So it's like that doesn't even make sense. Like when people talk about the American dream, like just despite what you believe, I'm like, immigrants really do make America great. I'm like, despite what they do for the economy and how much they put in, I'm like, that shouldn't even have to be like the reason why you should agree they should be here, right? Like the like amount of culture that they bring to America, that's not just like one ethnicity or whatever, one culture. It's like that's what makes it amazing. We're not even speaking for just like Mexicans, just like immigrants from wherever you're coming from. That's beautiful that we're able to share that and appreciate that, but people are against that. So like that should be the dream for some people, that I should hypothetically be able to go about it the right way and come in, but it's like that's just not the reality, unfortunately. So it's like that even the dream of doing that is just like gone for so many people, and it's horrible.
I don't know. I'm sure I'm trying to think like what reasons people come, for that quote unquote American dream.
Yeah, at least now, like I don't like, if I were to ask one of my cousins right now, I'm like, what would make you want to come over here? It's like I don't even know if they would have an answer.
I think the only thing that they would say,
Probably to make slightly more money.
more money. That's it.
Yeah, like
But that's the thing. Most people, they make money here, but I feel like all of them kind of have that idea to one day go back.
yeah,
That's why
absolutely.
so many people go and build their houses in Mexico.
Correct.
No one is like, the U.S. is so great, I'm going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
No, most people, if they're able to retire, you know, if they're fortunate enough to retire, they normally have a house in Mexico and they'll retire back home.
Yeah, mind you guys, my parents, like, obviously they both work here in America. They both make an okay amount of money. It's like, even the past few times my mom has gone to Mexico, she's like, hey, it might as well be like I'm shopping in the US. Like, these prices are insane. And it's like, if my mom that is making money in USD is struggling to purchase stuff over there, imagine people who are making money in pesos and whatever their wage is. I'm like, that's another thing to consider, you know? That's insane. So I could see why, despite all the horrible stuff that America might bring, why coming over here would still be worth the risk to them, if that could help anything. Like, we have a cousin that's my age, and I remember, like, years back, I think he was still a minor. Remember my dad had, like, jokingly said, like, well, if you really want to, like, I'll adopt you so you could come work over here, you'll make good money,
Yeah.
and you can come back. And, like, the thing that stopped him, ironically at the time, was, like, love, because he had a girlfriend. But it's like, still, like, that, had he not had that girlfriend, I think he would have done it.
I don't know though.
I
Once
think
again,
he
you have
would've.
to think about him being a minor too. You know, like
Yeah,
it's a whole different thing to like get excited to think about something. But like I said, I don't know. I think our generation, which is I think another thing that the older generations kind of like hate on the younger generations, is that people back then, I feel like, were so, how do I say it? They were so hungry for, you know, to come here like to the country and start like progressing right away. You know,
Yeah.
like what do I have to do to like get papers?
got you.
What do I have to do to like buy a house right away and all that? And now I feel like this younger generations, and it could just be because we're more aware of traumas, mental health, things like that. Like
Absolutely.
we're also dealing with other problems that the older generations didn't have. That I feel like, which is why the older generations have coined the younger generations as lazy
Yeah, and it's situational, you
and
know,
all
like,
that.
there's a level of awareness that we have because we're experiencing it now comparing to them. Like, so it's very easy for them to say that from their perspective, but of course they never think of, like, they'll never be in our shoes and we'll never be in theirs. So of
Yeah.
course they could look at us and be like, you're lazy, but it's like, there's people now that are working full time, and they could, I saw something, I need to pull it up, I need to pull up the numbers, but it was like someone saying that if you, like, for example, me right now, if I saved all of my income, 100% of it, I would have to save for like 10 years straight to even consider buying a house that was the lowest price, even if it's a horrible quality house. 100% of your income for like 10 years, who's doing that? It's
Like to pay
impossible
it like in full.
to be able to afford a house, but like
Oh.
the lowest price
Mm.
possible. It's like, that's not even plausible. Like, who's gonna be
Yeah.
able to do that? Nobody. So it's like, that's why it's a really complicated conversation to get into with like the older generation, unless they're willing to hear you out. Because it's like, it's not that, I don't get me wrong, there's definitely people in our generation that you can call lazy or whatever, but I think also we have to look at, it's like, some of them might not be lazy, but because they're just like so worn out, they're like, I feel like I'm giving up, like, I feel like I've tried everything and it's still not enough.
That's
So
the
like, some
thing.
people
I
are getting
feel like
pushed away.
yeah, I feel like people, older generation too, I feel like not only were they able to stay afloat, but people were actually able to progress. And not that people in our generation can't progress. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's those really, you know, good successful stories. You know,
Mhm.
there are people that, not that you didn't choose smart, but people that go directly for degrees that there's a good high
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
job,
Like, you're
you know,
promised
yeah,
essentially a
that
job.
you have a good job and you'll be making good money right
Mhm.
away. But once again, everything comes with a cost.
Yeah.
You know, you might have to slave away crazy hours, you know.
Yeah, or be stuck working a job that makes good money, but you're not passionate about it. You know, like, there's pros and cons to everything. You
Yeah,
just
you
gotta
might
weigh
have
it.
to work a job that low key has some like immoral values, and you know.
Yeah, or you're kind of paying for it in your mental health. You know.
Yeah, so like, it's not that our generation can't progress. Obviously, people are buying houses. You know, none of that is
There's always gonna be those odds one
impossible.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, I don't know. Like I said, I just think whatever American dream that was promised beforehand, I
Doesn't
think
exist now.
no, it's just so much more unattainable.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it, honestly. And it's like, I don't know anyone who would be willing to argue that it still exists. And I think if you truly, like, if you 100% believe that it still exists, I would just like hope people that like would understand that that also has to come from a place of privilege. That because if you don't feel it affecting you, then that means you're in a good spot. But that's just not the reality for a lot of people.
And with the economy thing that I was like saying earlier, that I'm like, oh, I'm not an expert. It makes you wonder, like, right now, since a lot of people aren't buying houses, like, are we just gonna? And you know, like, you always see, I feel like regardless of where you live,
Mm-hmm.
you always see those little cookie cutter houses being built everywhere, those complexes.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, like, are those just gonna be empty and kind of get abandoned, and then we're
Or
gonna have
people
to
are just
see,
gonna keep buying them
yeah,
out. Like, you know, people that
not
have
just
hella
that.
money.
I'm like, people one, they'll be bought up by the people that do like Airbnbs and stuff like that. But I'm like, I feel like we might. I mean, like I said, I don't know what the numbers are like. I'm just talking out of my butt here.
Yeah.
I'm like, are we gonna be kind of like, what do you call it? Like low on apartments at some point? Like, are we gonna have to start clearing out like housing lots for future apartments because people aren't buying houses anymore?
Yeah, or like
At least
obviously the
at a
demand
lower.
there is gonna go up higher, so then the prices are gonna raise
Yeah,
for
and I'm like,
rent
so
too.
then I'm like, people are already paying crazy amount of rent right now, obviously
yeah,
compared to a mortgage. But right now, people can't afford mortgages because
so they're doing rent.
yeah, because I'm like, and they're doing. I'm like, it's such a weird little teeter totter, whatever that thing is called.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a constant gamble. Like you can never predict what's gonna happen next. So that's why I think it's also harder for people our generation to be able to even like predict what to do next. That's why some people don't even care about saving now because they're like, what's the point? I might never be able to obtain a house, so let me just be happy and risk just paying rent. But then at least I can do a bunch of other stuff with whatever money I would have put towards mortgage had I just done that. You know?
Yeah, and then it makes you like, for example, I feel like you're seeing more of that now with so many people working from home.
Oh
They
yeah.
just don't want to. For example, they're like, I want to live in a walkable city, and America's such an industrial country, really, in a lot of places, and like a lot of like the metropolitan cities, or whatever. Most cities aren't walkable.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're not walkable. So people are out here moving to places like Mexico City, like other city or
Not
like
only that, I
Barcelona.
feel like in a lot of like states here in America, there's like the idea of the third space is also dying out, so it makes it even harder for people want to do anything that's like you can go to a place and not like waste money. It's like everything costs money nowadays. It's
Yeah.
it's really difficult for people. Like that's why it's so hard to like try and just like hang on to this concept of like an American dream, and like that's why I guess I try my best to be empathetic towards people that are my age that might not still like be in a space where they want to keep pushing for more, because I'm like, if I were you, we're all drained, we're all just trying our
Yeah.
best truly. So it's like it's really hard. We only know from, I think, from our parents' perspective too. I'm like, that's us just speaking for like our parents that are Mexican. I don't want to imagine other countries that are like way more progressive. They must look at us and be like, what are they doing? Like, you guys are literally the richest country in the world, and like,
Yeah.
what's going on there? Like, why are you guys struggling? We shouldn't be, but we are. So it's like it's just it's a complicated conversation, but yet not, because it could be so simple, but it's just not.
Yes, and like I said, I think it's important to also consider conversations, like I said, from people like outside looking in.
Absolutely.
For example, when I went to school, there was obviously several foreign exchange students, and I remember one girl, she was Italian. Obviously she came to study here. She was saying how in Italy, yeah, like healthcare is free, but she's like, at what cost? She's like,
You take longer to get seen.
yes, you take longer to get seen.
You hear that a lot, like, happen in Canada too.
Yeah,
Or like your care might not be as well promised. Like, I don't know how true it is, but people say like some of the best doctors in the world have American education or American doctors.
Mhm.
But it also costs a lot to get that type of service.
Yeah.
It's like,
And then talking about like the American dream, I have a coworker who, oh my gosh, it like pulls at my heartstrings. But I'm like, I don't know. I haven't really asked her because I don't want to. I don't know. I kind of don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But she was a doctor in Mexico. I don't know what kind. I think someone said that she was like an OBGYN or something, like delivered
Okay.
babies. She moved here. Obviously, that degree is void. Like, does not work
Yeah,
here.
I've heard
And
so many
she's a
stories
CNA
like
now.
that.
She's a CNA.
So it's like all that work kind of like down
And
the
I'm
drain.
like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I'm putting myself in her shoes, right? And like, we have cousins that are doctors and stuff. And I'm like, man, like they are fulfilling their dream, right? Regardless of how they're living. And I'm like, and I'm trying to imagine them come living in the U.S. to do such a, not that obviously CNAs. Okay, I'm gonna try to remember where I left off. But yeah, this coworker that's a doctor back in her country is a CNA here. And like I said, I just don't know. I don't know if it breaks her heart every day when she goes to work, or if she's kind of accepted her reality and she was like, I'm striving for something more. Because she was asking me about my schooling and stuff. So in my head, I'm like, oh, was she wanting to like progress and go back to school at some point? I don't know. And like I said, she has a little kid. I haven't asked her how long she's been, because I don't know. I feel like we're kind of in some like murky waters. I don't want to look like
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I'm asking for too much and all that. But she has a young child, and I'm like, did she one of those people that came with that American dream? Maybe she's like, okay, like, well, I'd rather throw, and she might be one of those people that are like, I'll throw my degree away if my daughter can come get a U.S. education. Because that's the thing, U.S. education is kind of, I don't want to say it's universal, but I feel like
Oh,
it'll be taken.
I was just about to say that too. Like that's what breaks my heart the most, because it's like if you basically have a certification, something saying this person is qualified to do this job, it's nothing more than them just being they're discriminating against him. Like, if you're valid to work here and you're clearly showing that you're qualified to do it, I don't understand why they accept it. Yeah, if you have a American degree, it's accepted in a lot of places. It's valid. You're
Yeah.
allowed to practice in other countries. So it's like, I just don't know why there's not that same like level of understanding.
And I
there.
understand, for example, medicine is very different everywhere.
Or if you need to be certified in certain stuff,
Yeah,
new technology,
but I'm
I
thinking,
get
I'm
that.
like, the process to be able to kind of get recertified, requalified to American standards, I feel like that should be easier.
But it's not.
You know, I'm like, okay, yes, but I'm like, ideally, like, all basic science knowledge should probably be the same in my head,
Mhm.
at least, anyways. That you think it'd be transferable.
Especially something with healthcare, like you always need workers. So I just don't know why
Yeah.
that pathway isn't easier. But it's like it seems like there's, and every way you look, it seems like something in a system is always broken. There's not a single system that is out there that works perfectly. So
no, and another thing to add on to that, only because, like, for example, my experience in my industry, obviously I only know because I'm in healthcare, but, you know, there's DACA students that will go through nursing school, pay college,
yeah,
but then they're in a state where they won't allow you to take the certification you need in your state because you don't have a social security
yeah.
and you don't have papers.
And not only that, colleges will miss it because they're not at liberty to just ask you, well, are you a DACA student, just before like you decide to take this, or
Yeah, so I'm like, colleges don't care. They want your money regardless of.
they're not gonna risk
Yeah.
losing a money essentially from a
Yeah.
person. It's just you can go down so many different paths with this. You know, it's I sometimes I almost want to ask my parents, like, if they were living in Mexico right now and they still saw the way things are going in the U.S., if they would still take the same risk they took
Honestly,
decades
this
ago.
would be a good question to ask whether it's your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your parents. I feel like this is a good discussion to have.
Yeah.
Like, would you still come?
Well, yes, it's a good thing to ask them, but also with what we know, let's say imagine that we live somewhere else. Would you take the risk?
I'm like, in my head, right? But like I said, I don't know. There's too many in a perfect world if this and this worked. But I'm like, okay, like I said, if I was happy with my family situation in Mexico,
So
I
yes
could
or
get
no?
a good
Because you're
degree.
extending this answer a lot. It's just, are you doing it or not?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Because
Like I said-
you brought in a lot of factors, but again, my parents didn't have all that knowledge. For them, it really was just like a risk. Like, luckily, I know that obviously it's a great thing that we know all this, but still, you still wouldn't know if you were
And not
promised
just
a
that, like, for
job.
example, our dad has a degree. in
Yeah,
Mexico.
he
So I'm like,
does.
okay, I'm like, that was a possibility for him.
He could have been
So
an
why
accountant.
wouldn't it have been? Well, he is an accountant back home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's he just didn't pursue it after graduation or whatever. I'm saying, so I'm like, okay, if it happened for him, why wouldn't it happen for his daughters? Like, if we were to be, if we would have been born over there.
Yeah.
Once again, though, he was probably, I think his kind of degree was the kind where, like, it's either like during high school or something like that where you kind of decide what you want to do. But once again, I'm sure it was like a selection. It was probably like teacher, accountant, more so like STEM kind of things,
Okay. Now, well, let me answer it since you didn't ask it
Okay.
back to me.
Okay, we'll have to cut all my long.
Yeah, we
yapping.
might have to. I think for me, when I'm saying like, would I take the risk that my parents took? I mean, quite
Dude,
literally.
careful with your mic. You're like covering all of it.
The bottom. This doesn't pick up anything.
Okay. Well, you
Anyways.
finger on all of it.
Anyways, I think for me, when I'm imagining would I take the risk, I'm thinking like literally what my parents went through. I'm like, my mom, when you hear both their stories, my mom had it easier compared to my dad. So I'm like, I'm trying to think of it from my dad's standpoint. I'm like, if I had to do what my dad did, assuming I wouldn't be alone, I think it's easier for me to sit here and say I would do it, but it's like,
Yeah, which we're not gonna get into details here because
Yeah.
we're in murky waters. So.
yeah, we never know. Let's just say, if I could do it the way my mom did, yes. If the only way was with my dad, honestly, as much as I say that I'm
I
independent,
still wouldn't do my mom's, honestly.
Yeah.
Well,
well,
it was still a risk.
Okay, well, we're not getting into it, but I'm just saying, like, if it was like I could only do it the way my dad did, honestly, no. As much as I think I'm independent, I'm strong, and I'm brave to a degree, not that brave, unfortunately. So when people talk about coming over here, whichever way they did, I just hope that that's what I'm saying. Like, people think it's so simple, and it's like it's not. Like, that's scary,
Yeah, especially now, people getting deported to not even their home countries. Yeah, no, thank you. If
Yeah,
I'm
and
getting
people-
arrested and risking,
And people at the borders, like the agents having rifles, like
yeah, no, thank you. My risk in the U.S. of getting shot is already pretty high.
yeah.
I'd rather stay home. In this
That's why, like,
hypothetical.
it's even hard. Like, again, tying it back into the American dream, like, we should be the not that immigration wouldn't affect us because obviously our parents are immigrants, but they have papers, they're documented. The what's going on shouldn't scare us, but unfortunately it does because there's people that are here legally, did everything correctly, and yet that's not saving them in a sense. They like all bets are off the table. It's like
Yeah.
legality doesn't matter anymore. So that changes things a lot too. I'm like, I shouldn't be scared, but you never know.
Been recording for
Are you serious right now?
timer never.
I hate you so bad. Unfortunately, this conversation is so complex that genuinely it could be like a two-part series, and we know that we probably have said a lot, yet it feels like it'll never be enough, but I don't know.
It just seems like one big loop.
Yeah, like there's so
honestly.
many problems you could tie in, but for sure, like this is like a conversation that if you guys are genuinely interested about hearing our thoughts on more, we would love to hear your guys' thoughts too, and if you guys want to hear us talk about it more, but I mean, yeah.
And then real quick, this, like I said, I feel like this is important conversations to have with family members.
Yeah, and now more than ever, just have it with other people, especially if you have people in your life that you want to see their thoughts on where they kind of stand with you. I think it's an important conversation to have, regardless of their documentation status or their ethnicity, whatever. It doesn't matter.
And not just that, I feel like we're in that age where, you're making connections with people and all that. These are serious conversations to have because
Yeah,
you never know.
absolutely. So, guys, if there's anything we missed, tell us the cheese, man. Okay, bye.